Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So we're getting towards the end of 2018 now, and normally when we get into December, what that means is we get big blockbuster popcorn, family-friendly extravaganzas, and indeed there are a lot of those out at the end of this year. You think of things like Mary Poppins Returns, Aquaman, Bumblebee, and so on. But there is still room for alternative left field choices to take you by surprise. And I've been lucky enough to see one of said movies in advance just recently. It's called Sorry to Bother You, and it's the feature film debut of political activist and rapper Boots Riley, who I have to say makes a tremendously confident debut behind the camera with this. It's an incredibly surreal, biting, nasty, and very, very funny alternative to the kind of sort of schmaltzy mainstream movie that you might expect at this time of year. And I'm here to talk about it because I imagine that many of you have heard about this already. It's had very, very good reviews in America, and as I said, I was lucky enough to see it just last week, and it lives up to the hype. So as I said, feature film debut of Boots Riley, who brings that sense of impassioned anger and activism into the movie, which at its heart is an attack on capitalist structures, mainly capitalist structures established by white voices. It's interesting that earlier this year we had Spike Lee's Black Klansman, which was another great movie, which was similarly about codes of white power and insidious codes of white power. And this is still present within Sorry to Bother You, but it is a more general attack on capitalism and wealth and material gains. It's centrally focused around Lakeith Stanfield, who is a young African American guy living in his uncle's garage with his sort of art installer activist girlfriend played by Tess Thompson, who comes adorned throughout the movie with earrings that are basically slogans, as in fudge the power and so on. Obviously she doesn't have the word fudge on her earrings, but you get the picture. There is a brilliant reveal early on in which you find out that he is actually in his uncle's garage, to whom he owes rent, because there's a moment where he and Tess Thompson's character start to get it on, and then all of a sudden the door opens and you realise, oh, what you thought was an apartment is actually a garage. And this is the first sign that the movie is going to set out to wrong foot you in a host of very clever ways. It's set in a sort of recognisable version of Oakland in California, but there are some subtle and not so subtle signs this isn't the version of reality that we know it. For one thing, there is there are television screens in the background of pretty much every scene describing all manner of political and socio-economic unrest. Centrally, there is this company who claim to be offering sort of benevolent how do I put this, sort of a benevolent things for consumers, when in fact this appears to be a front for slave labour. That's all going on in the background, and this is causing all kinds of activism and vandalism, and sort of graffiti artists to sort of take to the streets. There is also a regular appearance of a TV show which plays a role later on in the narrative, called, if I remember rightly, Let Me Beat the Shit Out of You, in which literally people turn up on this TV show and have the crap beaten out of them for the purposes of mass entertainment. This is kind of what tells you that we're in a kind of Terry Gilliam-esque skewed version of the future. It's only a couple of steps away from probably where we are now, and certainly if you see the state of the world that it's in at the moment, we're only a couple of steps away from that. But centrally based around Lakeith Stanfield's character, who goes and gets a new job at a telemarketing company, in which he is just another drone. So again, echoes of Terry Gilliam's Brazil, and then clearly George Orwell's 1984 as well. And what he discovers is he is told by Danny Glover, who is the kind of the veteran worker who's sitting next to him, is like, you can only progress in this business if you adopt a white voice. But literally, it's not about him as a black person impersonating a white voice. Literally, when he gets this skill, his voice changes. Literally, changes to that of David Cross from Arrested Development. So, and this is employed to very, very surreal effect, and it's done in a way that is kind of matter of fact, as in, like, he literally does gain the ability to speak with a completely different voice, which he demonstrates to his girlfriend, as played by Tessa Thompson, and his friends, and they are initially impressed by it. And interestingly, again, to go back to Black Klansman comparison, this is the second movie in 2018 in which the idea of African American character adopting a white voice is actually part of the fabric of the storyline. And obviously, Black Klansman was based on true events. This isn't. And what Lakeith Stanfield's character then finds is that the ability to do this voice boosts his sales, and he then ascends up the ranks and becomes a Power Plus seller in the upper echelons of the company. Meanwhile, his friends, sort of lower down, people that he formerly had a kinship with, want to form a workers' union and overthrow the company, and are interested in a sense of protest and to an extent a sense of anarchism. And he finds himself at loggerheads with those people as he ascends further and further up the ranks. And then I won't give away any more of the plot on that, because the plot, as if it wasn't weird enough, the plot gets even stranger from then, as Lakeith Stanfield's character maybe starts to lose a sense of who he is in pursuit of, as I said, material gains and of wealth. And what does that mean what does it mean to have to sacrifice your own identity in pursuit of that? And I think there are echoes to an extent here of Jordan Peele's Get Out, which is of course the sensational horror hit of 2017, which was again about insidious notions of white culture and white supremacy, and what does it mean when an African American character sort of comes face to face with these creepy modes of power. There is a degree of that, but I think broadly speaking, this is a broader canvas. Sorry to Bother You has a broader canvas than that. Whereas Get Out had a kind of creepier, horror inflected message. This sort of takes as its basis a sort of capitalist subtext. I mean, there are elements of horror in this, and certainly, although it's a very, very funny film, the humour stems from a place of real anger at the way the world is. I mean, clearly it's meant to hold up a mirror to society we're living in at the moment. Boots Riley has himself said that it wasn't explicitly designed as an attack on Donald Trump necessarily. He said this movie was in development before Donald Trump even became president. He said it's important to note that. But it's a general state of the world address that covers off a number of different things, and I thought it was really, really good. Again, you fuse Get Out with Terry Gilliam and aspects of 1984, and also Office Space, the Mike Judge film, which is very underrated from some years ago. Fuse all of those together in a blender, and you get Sorry to Bother You, which, as I said, goes off into some incredibly bizarre and actually quite disturbing places later on. There is a late appearance from Armie Hammer as this kind of coke-snorting entrepreneur who is just fantastically horrible and slimy and seedy, and he's really, really funny. And again, the humour comes from that quite angry, almost dispirited kind of area, and I thought it was really, really good. Visually, it's very, very well done. Again, I like the way that it uses various aspects of the production design and the costume design to tell you that this is a version of reality that isn't quite our own, but there is just enough in it to be able to recognise what it is that's happening. There are some lovely Michel Gondry-esque visual flourish as well. Michel Gondry actually is cited in the movie at one point, albeit with his name as an anagram, which again, this is all kind of stuff that film fans will really, really lap up. But I think essentially the reason why it works is because Lakeith Stanfield is really, really likeable. He's a really likeable character, and I think no matter what your race, background, gender, whatever, I think that the struggle that he goes through, which is how do you cling to a sense of identity when you're pursuing a high-powered career, or indeed any kind of career? What does that mean for your personality? What does it mean for your relationships? And all of this, essentially grounds the movie in something that is very relatable and very likable. And I mean, he's another breakout. Clearly, he was in Get Out. I mean, he's had a phenomenal year as well. We recently saw him in The Girl in the Spider's Web. He's a really likeable actor, and one of the breakout stars of 2018, as far as I'm concerned. Although, as I've said, he's been around for a while in the likes of Donald Glover's series Atlanta. Yeah, I thought it was a really, really funny, really twisted satirical comedy. It had howls of laughter in the previous screening that I was in, but crucially, it knows when to make the audience stop laughing and when to make its point. I mean, it has an element of real horror and absurdity, like dark absurdity, really going on underneath it. And yeah, I would recommend it. Anyone looking for an alternative to the big noisy blockbusters that we're about to be inundated with, I would say go and see it. It's out in the UK on the 7th of December. It's called Sorry to Bother You, and I'd love to know what you think of it here on Kubrick Corner. So let me know, and I'll see you soon. Bye.